It's really interesting how some of these ideas about autism kind of stick around. And today we're diving into those articles you shared, all about high masking, which is super fascinating on its
Yeah,
own.
right.
But there's this stereotype that
Yeah,
we wanted to
yeah.
unpack a bit, this idea that if you're good at masking, you must be totally into anime.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a good example
Like, is there any truth to it, or is it just,
of how stereotypes latch on to something that's noticeable,
totally?
but then that kind of flattens the whole picture. So like high masking, just so we're all on the same page, because the source actually defines it really well.
Yeah,
It's basically being able to camouflage those autistic traits,
right.
especially in social situations. So it's this way of sort of blending in,
Right.
but it doesn't like erase who someone is or
It's not like a costume, that you take off and then you're,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we're not saying at all
No, not at all.
that some people on the spectrum aren't
Yeah.
totally into anime. Like,
Of course. Of course.
that's just not.
It's not a given.
Yeah, and I think the source mapped a really good point about how assuming that connection can actually be kind of harmful,
Oh, absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
Because imagine feeling this pressure to conform to this, like, very specific image
Yeah.
in order to be seen as authentically autistic.
Totally.
And it really limits the understanding of neurodiversity, which is all about embracing, like, the wonderful range
Yeah.
of ways that people experience the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, it kind of goes back to that idea of putting everyone in a box and being like, well, if you're this, then you must like that.
Totally. Yeah, it's like it limits us, it limits them.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
not fair.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the source really gets into how diverse those experiences can be. Like, it wasn't just about anime. There was a whole list of interests, like
Yeah.
everything, like from sports
Yeah.
to music to
Right.
art
Yeah.
to tech. Like, it really ran the gamut. And, it makes sense when you think about how, like, our brains are wired differently, right? So the source talks about how for some autistic individuals,
Mhm.
certain activities can provide this like sense of focus or pattern recognition or even like sensory input that's actually really regulating for them.
So it's not even just that.
Yeah.
They like it. It's like how it
Totally.
makes them feel or
Yeah, it's like a deeper level. It's
Wow.
not just like, oh, I like that band. It's like, this does something for me.
right, exactly.
Like on a neurological level.
Yeah. And I was even thinking about that, like
Yeah.
with the music example that the source talks about.
Totally.
Like for me, there are definitely times where I'm feeling overwhelmed. And it's like I put on my noise canceling headphones. I have like my lo-fi beats. And that's the only thing that can like bring me back down to earth.
There you go.
You know?
Yeah.
Like there's something about it.
And, on the flip side of that too, like music also has this incredible emotional depth,
Totally.
which I think for anyone, but particularly for, someone on the spectrum, the way that those emotions are processed and experienced can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's like its own language
Totally.
in a way, like that maybe you just connect with on this other level.
Totally. Yeah. And it can be hard to like put that into words.
Right.
Which is why I
Okay.
think a lot of times those special interests, whatever they may be,
Yeah.
end up being so important because it's like, this is the thing that makes me feel seen or like I can connect with this on a deeper level,
Yeah, absolutely. It
Yeah.
really is like its own language. And you can tell when someone's explaining, music or whatever it is that they're passionate about, it's like,
Totally.
you said it's like this deeper level of connection.
Yeah. And that actually makes me think about
Yeah.
how the source talked about the importance of support, right? Because it's one thing to just kind of like,
Accept that these different interests exist, but then it's like, how do we actually
totally.
create space for them?
Totally. Like, how do we put that into action?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's about like moving beyond just, okay,
Yeah.
accepting like, oh yeah, you're really into that, and actually
Right.
actively like creating space for those things to be celebrated and shared,
Oh, I love that.
So like imagine
Yeah.
someone, maybe is like a younger person
Yeah.
and they're super into something that maybe you don't know a lot about, or it's not like,
Yeah, not super mainstream or
but
whatever.
exactly. And instead of being like, oh, that's cool or whatever, what if you were like,
Yeah.
tell me more about that? Like, what is it about that you find so fascinating?
Right, like actually engaging with it.
Exactly, because that's what makes people feel seen.
Yeah. Like what you're into
Totally.
matters.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, hey, what you're passionate about is important to me.
Because you're important to me, and that goes a long way.
Totally. It's that genuine interest. And, it makes me think like,
Yeah.
what's one thing our listener can take from all of this?
Yeah.
Like, what's a small step they can take
Oh, that's such a good question.
to be more inclusive in their own lives?
I think it goes back to, like, that next time someone shares an interest that's new to you,
Okay.
instead of that, like, initial maybe urge to be like, oh, that's whatever.
Yeah.
See it as an opportunity to learn something new.
Right.
Like, you might walk away being like, wow, I learned something new about this person, or I discovered this whole new thing, you know?
Totally. Approach it with that curiosity
Exactly.
and that open mind, because you just never know. And I think ultimately that's what it's all about, right?
Totally.
Remembering that everyone's brain
Mm.
is wired a little differently, and those differences are something to celebrate, not to
Absolutely.
erase or, you know.
Yeah, it's not about, like, everyone needs to be the same.
Great.
It's about, like, how can we appreciate those differences, you know?
Exactly. And if we can do that, if we can really take that to heart,
Yeah.
who knows what we can learn from each other?
It makes you wonder, like, what other assumptions are we holding on to? And how can we bring that same, like,
Huh?
curiosity and openness
Yeah.
to other areas of our lives?
What a thought-provoking
Right.
question to leave us with.
I know, right?
So thank you for always bringing these amazing articles
Of course. Happy to be here.
and starting these deep dives. Has been such a great conversation. And for our listeners, keep those deep dives coming.
Yes, please.
We love to hear from you. And until next time.
See you then.